as athletes, workmates, and companions. So they're medicated with hundreds of toxic chemicals and pharmaceuticals that are banned for use on livestock or food-producing animals. And we're putting these horses into the food supply. And, you know, we're contaminating the food supply knowingly. We supply 2/3 of the horses that are slaughtered for human consumption in Mexico and in Canada.
Now, why would, and I know that you're sincerely, gravely opposed to eating horse, but why would people go to all this effort to argue on behalf of eating horses when there are perfectly good cows available, for example? What is the appeal of horse meat?
That's a great question. You know, the cost of raising horses for slaughter is way more than the cost of raising cows for slaughter. And the slaughter process is much more costly for horses. They have 5 times more blood than a cow. You know, it's just a messy process. I can't fathom why anybody would want to slaughter a horse. They're physically, you know, they have the long muscular necks, so the head restraints don't work, the captive bolt doesn't work. I really don't know why anybody wants to bring that industry to the United States.
Do you think there's something degrading of a nation about eating horses?
Personally, I do, yeah. But honestly, our fight is about public health and food safety.
Right.
There is a crisis. You know, we're contaminating the food supply with toxic horses. Horse meat that's sourced from U.S. horses is toxic.
And there's something awful about it. I agree with you. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think I'm on your side. Thank you very much for that. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Tucker.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio has isolated the main cause of America's problems. We'll give you a hint. It's a certain cable news channel. We'll tell you more as our Inside the Issues special continues after this.
Today, you have one outlet and one outlet only that is constantly sowing division, and we should be able to talk about that.
So you'd rather not have the New York Post or Fox News exist?
Look, it's a free country. I'm saying because they exist, we've been changed for the worst. I feel very angry when I see a media outlet, a corporate giant, a profit-making giant, dividing people and creating hatred and negativity. CNN, you could try and find some politics in CNN, but it does not even come close to resembling the clear political agenda of News Corp.
That was New York City Mayor and non-genius Bill de Blasio on CNN recently, describing what he believes is the biggest problem America faces: diversity of opinion. Well, there isn't much of it left in this country. Almost every news outlet has identical views on everything, and they happen to be the same as Bill de Blasio's views. There's only one television network that isn't completely on board, and that is one too many for Bill de Blasio. Dissent is divisive, he says. Things would be much better if people who disagree with Bill de Blasio were forced to shut up. Mandatory consensus. That's the less view of paradise. We don't agree, by the way, and we plan to keep saying so. We move into our ongoing investigation into wind turbines. They have a well-deserved reputation for causing noise pollution, ruining the natural landscape, and providing precious little electricity in return for all of that. They also kill a lot of birds. But could they also be hurting our military? We spoke with Texas State Senator Donna Campbell about that. Here's our conversation. State Senator Donna Campbell joins us now. Senator Campbell, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I've heard a lot of complaints about corporate wind farms. One, that they are unsightly. Two, that they don't produce meaningful and usable energy. Three, that they kill an awful lot of birds. You are saying that there's a fourth problem with them, that they hinder military readiness. Tell us how.
You're right. They do hinder military readiness, and I would say that's the primary problem. I took a tour at our Naval Air Station in Kingsville, where we train over half of our Naval and Marine Corps pilots. And there I saw firsthand look. I had a firsthand look at the wind turbines. I mean, they are 500 feet tall, some as tall as 2 football fields in height. Huge blades, and in a cluster, we find that they affect the mission of the base. The flight paths have to be changed. The altitudes have to be changed. It degrades radar. And all of this combined actually affects mission readiness, which in turn affects our national security. It's a threat that needs to be dealt with.
But I noticed that they're almost all in low-income rural areas. You don't see them in Nantucket Sound. You don't see them off the coast of Santa Monica. Why is it that the people most in favor of corporate wind farms don't have them in their own backyards? Have you noticed that?
Yes, and I couldn't have put it better myself, Tucker. They are putting them on the coast down in Texas. They're clustered across the landscape of America, except in the places, of course, where they want to keep the area pretty. Important for us is that, important for us is that we don't compromise our national security.
No, well, of course, and that's a new angle in this, and I'm glad you brought it to our attention. Senator, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Tucker.
That's it for tonight's special Inside the Issues Hour. Hope you had a good time. We did. Tune in every weeknight, 8 p.m. to the show that is the sworn enemy, and we mean that, of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Good night. See you Monday.
Welcome to this special edition of Hannity, Trump versus the Deep State. I'm Janine Pirro, and tonight for Sean. Earlier today, President Trump was asked about his administration's decision to revoke John Brennan's security clearance. The president said he has received a, quote, tremendous response and denied that he is trying to silence his critics. Take a look.
I know that I've gotten tremendous response from having done that, because security clearances are very important to me. Very, very important. And I've had a tremendous response for having done that. There's no silence. If anything, I'm giving him a bigger voice. Many people don't even know who he is, and now he has a bigger voice, and that's okay with me, because I like taking on voices like that. I've never respected him. I've never had a lot of respect. And Senator Burr said it best. If you knew anything, why didn't you report it when you were before all of these committees, including their committee? So he had a chance to report. He never did. This was just came up lately, and it's a disgusting thing, frankly. Look, I say it again. That whole situation is a rigged witch hunt. It's a totally rigged deal. They should be looking at the other side. They should be looking at all the people that got fired by them. All of the people that got fired, they should be looking at Bruce Orr and his wife Nellie for dealing with, by the way, indirectly Russians. They should be looking at Steele. They should be looking at all these FBI guys who got fired and demoted. It's a really weird, it's not us. It is a rigged witch hunt. I've said it for a long time.
The president also called demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr, quote, a disgrace. And he talked about his revoking of his security clearance. President Trump also pointed out Robert Mueller's massive conflicts. Watch this.
I think Bruce Orr is a disgrace. I suspect I'll be taking it away very quickly. I think that Bruce Orr is a disgrace with his wife Nellie. For him to be in the Justice Department and to be doing what he did, that is a disgrace. That is disqualifying for Mueller. And Mr. Mueller has a lot of conflicts also, directly yourself, so you know that. Mr. Mueller is highly conflicted. In fact, Comey is like his best friend. I could go into conflict after conflict. But sadly, Mr. Mueller is conflicted. But let him write his report. We did nothing. There's no collusion. But if he was doing an honest report, he'd write it on the other side. Because when you look at criminality and you look at problems, take a look at what they did, including colluding with the Russians, the other side.
Also tonight, today was the second day of deliberations in the Paul Manafort trial. The jury has not yet delivered a verdict. They've deliberated, though, for over 14 hours. The trial is now in recess until Monday morning. President Trump was asked about the Manafort trial today, and here's what he had to say about it.
I think the whole Manafort trial is very sad when you look at what's going on there. I think it's a very sad day for our country. He worked for me for a very short period of time. But you know what? He happens to be a very good person. And I think it's very sad what they've done to Paul Manafort. Thank you very much.
As Hannity has explained many times on this show, Paul Manafort's trial has nothing to do with Russia collusion. Joining us now with a reaction is the author of Why We Fight, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Victoria Tensing. All right, good evening, everyone. I want to start with you, Sebastian. You know, this whole idea of security clearances, I mean, we all know that you don't have a right to have a security clearance. You know, Brennan is kicking and screaming that he's losing his First Amendment rights as if he's going to stop talking. And it really is a courtesy, a professional courtesy. So is this guy entitled to a courtesy of any sort?
I don't care who the president is, Judge. I don't care whether it's a Republican. I don't care whether it's a Democrat. I don't care whether it's an independent. The fact is, why should anybody who's left government service maintain a clearance for the rest of their lives? The viewers should understand that at every security clearance, the first investigation, just the first one, costs you, the taxpayer, $25,000. And then we expect...
Sebastian, here's the argument that they make, and there's a way I understand it, and that is there is institutional knowledge. So if a new head of the CIA comes in and he says, you know, let me talk to somebody who's done this before, not that Mike Pompeo's going to want to call John Brennan, but that is the argument, you know, whether it's a new DA coming in or a new CIA, you know, does that make sense, though?
But no, it doesn't. Even that one doesn't make sense. Why? What happens to John Brennan? What happens to James Woolsey if they leave the position of director of CIA and they are read out of the programs and they lose their clearance? Does their institutional memory suddenly fall out of their ears? Of course it doesn't. If their advice, if their counsel is requested by their successor in this administration, I can guarantee you, Judge, nobody wants to ask John Brennan's advice because he voted for the communists in 1976 and he's still doing the work of Putin. If they want to talk to him, they can invite him back. He can sit in a skiff. He can tell you, well, back in 1980, whatever. The clearance is irrelevant to the question of institutional memory.
Well, and you know, Tom Fitton, I'll go to you. I mean, you're fighting to get information. But let's stay on the topic of the clearance. Hillary Clinton exposed classified secrets on her email, and that's according to Jim Comey, like an open orchid, according to that Romanian hacker Guccifer. So why is she still walking around with her security clearance, and why isn't she on that list of wanteds, so to speak?
That's a good question. Whether she has one or not is an open question, frankly. But, you know, the idea of a courtesy national security clearance, it tells you that it's not about national security. It's about political rackets here in Washington, D.C., where these former officials keep their security clearances as a part to use as part of their resume to increase their value to their next employers. It has nothing to do with national security. It's an indication of swamp politics, the way things work. And it was a brilliant anti-corruption move by the president to take on Brennan here. And I hope he does go down the list. And frankly, we should reform the whole system. Once you leave government, we have no more need for you. You're not working for the government anymore. You're not a contractor. You lose your national security clearance. Doesn't mean we don't appreciate the prior service, but we move on to protect the national security for people walking around out in the street with no government business for having it.
The next CEO of any organization, Tom, doesn't get to go back into the company and check everything they want to know about it. Once their time is up, their time is up. But Victoria, I mean, if you've got these people who keep their clearance, and there's no question they're monetizing, they're politicizing, consultants, advisors, lobbyists, MS and CNN consultants, or talking heads. But is there a sunset period where it automatically, and I know you represent a lot of these people who have clearances over the years, is there a sunset? Do you then fight to keep it?
Judge,
what?
I am the only one on this panel who has a clearance. I have top secret clearances
How long
right
have you
this
had
minute.
it? How often do you have to go through a review?
Well, and this is to answer your question because it depends. And I have had representation of people from the CIA and most recently my Uranium One, Doug Campbell, client. And so I had to have top secret clearances in order to be able to talk with them. And so it depends on what you're doing. I don't know. Do you need a top secret clearance to do your job? Because that's the job Brennan's doing right now. He's commenting on TV. I don't think he needs it for that.
But what about everyone else? I mean, you know, why? Let's talk about, and I'll go to you, Seb. You know, Bruce Orr. This guy's back channeling information from a guy who was let go by the FBI and who's a good friend of his wife, who works for the organization that made the dossier, and he's channeling this information from the from Steele to the DOJ. I mean, forget about security clearance. Why is he even working in the Department of Justice?
There's one reason and one reason alone. As you are well aware, there are certain administrative things that you can do to somebody who is in government employ that you can't do to them once they've been fired. That's the charitable excuse. But my advice is very simple to the administration. Everybody like Brennan, like Clapper, like McCabe, who have demonstrated their partisanship, should be stripped of their clearances forthwith. Anybody else on that long, long list, and it's not just the list Sarah Huckabee read, it's a much longer list. Anybody whose fingerprints are on Uranium One, on FISA-gate, on the unmaskings, and I mean it.
All right, but here's the thing. You know the president. The president's a tough guy. Why isn't he doing it?
Well, I think he's getting. I think he gets. I'll tell you what. Look, there are certain individuals in the counsel to the president's office who are more lawyers than they are political professionals, and they don't understand the costs to national security of not stripping these people of their security clearances.
Okay, Tom Fitton, you know what? I will go to you, Victoria. Seb just said something that is very interesting, and that's a lot of these lawyers in the Oval Office, are in there saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, what do you think?
Well, I think that's going to change, because I think the president has found a shiny new toy, and that is something else that he can do in addition to pardons that nobody can stop him from doing,
Right.
notwithstanding the silly people on the Hill say they're going to pass some legislation that stops him from taking away clearances. They can't stop him. That's an executive authority, and I think he's found that it's tweaking people, and particularly people that he wants to tweak, and it's going to continue.
Okay.
Unabated, I predict.
Okay, and Tom Fitton. I mean, now you've got Bruce Orr, who clearly is violating all of the rules of the FBI and the DOJ as it relates to sources. So why is Mueller not investigating them? And I heard someone today say, well, it's supposed to be about the election. Well, this is about the election, about Bruce Orr working with Fusion GPS, and his wife is making money off of Fusion. He's not declaring that money in his financial disclosure. He's conflicted. I mean, why isn't Mueller looking at him? Instead, is Mueller's taking the investigation or the information from him?
Well, there's your problem. You've got Mueller using Bruce Orr's information, Christopher Steele's information, the Clinton DNC dossier, using that, taking that whole Obama-Clinton operation targeting at Trump and running with it. Look, this Justice Department is attacking the presidency through the Mueller operation, saying that he doesn't have the right to fire the FBI director and investigating him for that. Now they're messing with his ability to conduct foreign policy. If I were the president, I would come in and tell the Justice Department, either you stop it, and if you refuse to do so, I may go to court to get it stopped. Because right now, you've got an out-of-control Mueller investigation. We see where they're going with Manafort, where they're willing to break every rule in the book to get someone who's not even involved in Russia collusion. Lord knows what else they're willing to do to get President Trump.
Well, you know, and Sebastian, maybe you can just put a period on that one, because clearly you've got these guys involved in the run-up to the election. Their jobs, they violated the rules, and they you know, to many, they committed obstruction of justice by creating this false document and lied to the court. Why is Mueller not looking at them?
I'll tell you why. Because the day before Mueller was appointed special counsel by his best friend, Rod Rosenstein, he had an interview in the White House to which Rod Rosenstein escorted him, in which he wanted to get his old job back as director of the FBI.
Yep.
Robert Mueller wanted his old job back, and he failed. He crashed and burned, and the new president said, no, you're not going to be the director. I want new blood. After I fired Comey. And what did Rod Rosenstein do? The next day, he appointed this man as special prosecutor against a man who he had failed in front of during his job interview. That is the biggest conflict of interest. This is a revenge operation. Bob Mueller is executing a revenge operation.
But Judge, let me say something, because there's a legal reason also that this is happening, and it's the way Rod Rosenstein drafted the authority that he gave to Mueller. He said any link that you find between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, he did not give an authority to Mueller to go into the Clinton campaign or anything to do with this, the DNC.
Mueller should be investigating himself. He's a witness in this case.
Yeah, well,
it's incredibly absurd to have him run this investigation, given his personal involvement in the underlying facts of the case.
And tomorrow
Where is the Justice Department?
And tomorrow night in my open, because we have to go, guys, I'm going after him for all his conflicts. Anyway, thank you very much, all of you. But coming up, Catherine Herridge has obtained emails and written notes from demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr. Catherine's joining us next with a full report, and we're going to get reaction from Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, Congressman Matt Gaetz, as this special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Fox News chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge has obtained emails and written notes from demoted DOJ official Bruce Ohr, written during the 2016 election. These notes show Ohr had contact with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson and the creator of the anti-Trump dossier, Christopher Steele. Catherine Herridge joins us now with the very latest. Catherine?
Judge would be much appreciated. 3 months later, Steele describes to Ohr mounting legal pressures and the constant stress of media scrutiny. I am presuming you've heard nothing back from your special counsel colleagues on the issues you kindly put to them from me. We have heard nothing either. Steele continues that the radio silence is beyond disappointing. Certain people have been willing to risk everything, he writes, to engage with them in an effort to help them reach the truth. Separately, the emails suggest Ohr, his wife Nellie, were in frequent and friendly contact with the co-founder of Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, whose firm put together the Trump dossier using Steele's research. Nellie Ohr worked for Simpson. Today, President Trump singled out Ohr, whose security clearance is under review.
I think Bruce Ohr is a disgrace. I suspect I'll be taking it away very quickly. I think that Bruce Ohr is a disgrace with his wife Nellie. For him to be in the Justice Department and to be doing what he did, that is a disgrace.
Asked whether their office has engaged with Ohr or used Ohr as an intermediary for Steele, a spokesman for special counsel Robert Mueller declined to comment. Judge?
Thank you, Catherine. And Sarah Carter has also obtained notes from Bruce Ohr, and according to her reporting, in one of Ohr's notes from May 2017, he writes about a call with Christopher Steele and reveals that Steele was, quote, very concerned about Comey's firing, afraid they will be exposed. Joining us now with more is Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, the New York Times bestselling author of The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary and Frame Donald, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. All right. Good evening, everyone. Now, Sarah, what you have unearthed some additional information. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, I think it's very telling what Bruce Ohr and his relationship with Christopher Steele and how concerned Christopher Steele was that they would be exposed. There was also another text message, Judge Jeanine, that I was able to publish last week, and it was about the firewalls. And Christopher Steele basically asks Bruce Ohr, will our firewalls that we have in place hold? Will these firewalls hold? And this is also very telling and something that is very concerning to Congress, because apparently it seems that they premeditated and worked around, used Bruce Ohr as a back channel to deliver Steele's messages straight over to the FBI, even though he had been fired. But they put up firewalls. And what Congress wants to know is who were these and what were these firewalls? And that's what they'll be asking him on August 28th when they bring him in for deposition.
All right. And Matt Gaetz, I mean, you've certainly had your share of inquiries of these individuals. When he does come before, I believe, 2 committees at the end of August, I mean, what do you expect to hear? Now we're hearing things that he didn't talk about in the past.
We know that Bruce and Nellie Ohr are the Bonnie and Clyde of collusion. Think about what we just learned. A foreign spy is upset that he's not able to use our own Justice Department enough to poison and influence Robert Mueller's investigation. This is after Fusion GPS hired the spouse of Bruce Ohr to be able to have their influence. Look, you have the spouse of a senior Justice Department official colluding with an agent of a foreign government, Christopher Steele, with the express purpose of trying to destabilize a U.S. presidential election. Why is this not what we're looking into? Why is Robert Mueller not looking into this foreign interference and not the hoax of the Trump-Russia investigation that, by the way, Greg Jarrett points out beautifully in his new book?
Oh, that's such a nice plug. Sarah, let me ask you something. When the congressman talked about the fact that Nellie was hired by Fusion, Nellie Ohr, do we know when she was hired by Fusion GPS?
Yeah, she was hired by Fusion GPS in 2016.
Oh, and this is right before the election.
That's right, with a very specific purpose, Judge Janine, to actually investigate the Trump-Russia issue, the dossier. Remember, she's fluent in Russian. She's also a Russia expert. This was very well coordinated, and I agree with Matt Gaetz 100%. Congressman Gaetz is right. This was an effort to bring Russian disinformation in this dossier into our election and to affect the election.
Right. And Greg Jarrett, I mean, you know, Bruce Orr, it looks to me, is in legal jeopardy. What could he be charged with?
I mean, these are the documents, 63 pages. I've looked through them over the last 10 days that I've had them, and it's clear to me that he is in legal jeopardy. It's astonishing that he's still employed, and here's why. Bruce and Nellie Orr's bank account is getting fatter and fatter because of the dossier that they are both peddling. He doesn't disclose it under federal regulations. He's required to do so. So that is potentially a crime, filing a false report.
Right.
But beyond that, using your federal office for personal financial gain is federal gratuity statute violation, bribery statute violation, honest services violation.
But these guys know this in the Department of Justice. Why is the guy still working?
Because the Department of Justice is run by a feckless attorney general named Jeff Sessions, and Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general, who is obstructing Congress, I believe, to cover up his own participation and wrongdoing. He filed and signed the renewal application for the wiretap on the Trump campaign without the required evidence.
Right. And you know,
and Judge,
go ahead,
Judge, I wanted to make a point about what Greg just said. Rod Rosenstein won't tell us when he first learned that Nellie Orr was working for Fusion GPS. So I want to know from Bruce Orr, when did he tell his colleagues at the Department of Justice that in violation of the law that required him to disclose his wife's occupation and her sources of income, he did not do that? And so when did all the other people at the Department of Justice find this out? Because Rod Rosenstein, I've asked him twice in open hearing, and he will not give an answer. I think there's a real smoking gun there.
Yeah, I think there's more than a smoking gun there. But let's go back, Sarah Carter, to the whole idea of Nellie Orr getting the job right before the election, and then, as Greg says, you know, pocketing all of this cash in their bank account. And Orr is facilitating trying to get Christopher Steele, who's been cut loose, on the Mueller team now. Why are they so invested in this that they know that they can be charged with crimes, lose their job? What is it that they're so caught up on?
They're caught up on removing President Trump. They're caught up on pushing this disinformation, these lies into the American public and into the media, and trying to get these lies to stick. And what they didn't expect was for all of this to come out and be revealed, Judge Janine. And now we look at Rod Rosenstein, and let me just say one thing about this. He signed that fourth FISA application. He would have known all of this information, because remember, there were 4 renewals. So he should have known what was in there. And if he didn't, then there's something wrong with him, because this is one of the biggest cases in the country.
Well, I want to talk about the Manafort trial today, guys. We're now in the second day, and Greg, I'm going to start with you, of deliberations. And the jury has been let go for the evening. When I was a judge, I very often would keep juries. Once they got a case, I would keep them in, especially in a case like this, where there is so much public interest. But what do you think? It seems that the defense attorney is very heartened by some of the questions about reasonable doubt.
That's right. They sent out a question yesterday to the judge. What's the definition of reasonable doubt? As you know, as a former judge and a DA, there is no legal standard definition for reasonable doubt, because we leave it to the discretion and determination of the jurors themselves. It's a very, very high burden. And the reason the defense is pleased about that is because they mounted a reasonable doubt defense. They didn't call a case in earnest, but they did it through cross-examination.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think that they have tried to zero in on 1 or 2 jurors to either hang the jury or convince the jury unanimously there is reasonable doubt you cannot convict.
You know, Congressman, what do you think is going to happen in this case?
Well, I think it's going to be overblown because nothing in this case has anything to do with Donald Trump, the Trump campaign, or any involvement in the 2016 campaign with Russia.
Will he be convicted?
I don't know. I guess I just don't really care if Paul Manafort pays taxes in the 80s or 90s, like, to the same extent that CNN seems to follow it every single second. I just don't think that it has any relevance, and it's distracting the country.
It should have been an IRS audit and a civil penalty plus interest, and
But this is what the feds do, Greg. It's what they do. Sarah, you got 10 seconds.
Okay, but we see what happened today with Judge Ellis coming out and saying that he has been threatened, that he has to have, the security of marshals, and now there's a lot of concern about these jurors. This is what happens, Judge Janine, when we have such a divisive country right now and so much rhetoric from the other side.
That's why I'm surprised that he has let them out so that there's a possibility of tampering. This is a very, very hot climate, guys. Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate your input. And coming up, Senator Lindsey Graham is raising concerns with the head of the FBI about the Bureau's political bias during the 2016 campaign. Kristen Fisher has a live report from Washington next. And don't forget to get your hands on a copy of my book, New York Times best-selling book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Today, Senator Lindsey Graham wrote a letter to the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, and expressed his concerns about the, quote, double standard and the mounting evidence of bias against the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. Joining us now with more from Washington is Kristen Fisher. Kristen?
Well, Judge, Senator Lindsey Graham's accusing the FBI of a double standard because of the difference in terms of how it handled Russian contacts with the Trump campaign versus how it handled a suspected Chinese spy on Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein's staff. So in a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray today, Senator Graham said that, quote, though I appreciate the FBI's diligence in identifying the staffer with potential ties to the Chinese government and providing Senator Feinstein with a defensive briefing, I am deeply troubled that the Trump campaign was not afforded the same treatment. Now, this letter comes just days after Senator Graham said on Fox News Sunday that he wants to appoint another special counsel, this one to investigate the FBI and why a Department of Justice official, Bruce Orr, was allowed to investigate then-candidate Trump while Orr's wife worked for the opposition research firm that produced that now infamous dossier.
Bruce Orr was at least unethical. We need a special counsel to look at all things Department of Justice and FBI when it came to the Trump investigation, particularly the counterintelligence investigation.
Now, so far, the FBI hasn't responded to Senator Graham's letter, but boy, Judge, Senator Graham sure came out swinging this week.
All right, Kristen, thanks so much. And joining me now with reaction is former press secretary for Vice President Pence, Mark Lotter, and from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jordan Sekelo. All right, Mark, this whole idea of bringing in another special counsel to investigate Mueller, which is something that I talked about last Saturday in my open, and I'm going after him tomorrow night. I mean, doesn't the deputy director, the deputy attorney general, have to be the one to appoint a new special counsel? And that would be Rod Rosenstein?
It would either be Rod Rosenstein or Attorney General Sessions.
Hold on. Sessions is hiding in a closet. He ain't coming out for this. Okay.
This would be a great time. This would be a great time to come out on this. But this whole thing has been a charade from the beginning. I mean, the double standard on dealing with Dianne Feinstein, as Senator Graham pointed out. But let's talk about the biggest double standard there was. Hillary Clinton got a free pass. The Trump administration is under a special prosecutor investigation. You can go time and time again. The FBI politely asked the DNC for their server, the key piece of evidence, and yet Bob Mueller subpoenas everything under the sun from the Trump campaign. It's just one double standard after another.
But you know what? I have to tell you, Jordan Sekelo, I bet a lot of people wouldn't be as concerned with the procedure. All right, like you go in with search warrants and you try to you drag people out of bed to get information when you have a warrant. Okay, that's bad. That's horrible. But where things are as blatant as they are right now, with back channeling from a guy who was let go by the FBI, who was writing getting the fake dossier written. These pals with Bruce Orr and his wife, they're making money on it. They're now shivering in their boots because Comey is fired. I mean, how can this guy Mueller absolutely, or anyone else, continue to investigate and get up in the morning and look at himself?
Well, what we've said, Janine, is whatever happened, Judge, with the information that Peter Strzok gathered at his time during when he was on the Mueller team. Remember, Peter Strzok was in charge of this investigation for an entire year before the special counsel was appointed. Did they shred everything and start over? I highly doubt that. But yet we see his bias. He gets fired from the special counsel's team because of the text messages. Ultimately, he gets fired from the FBI, joins his friend Andrew McCabe and Jim Comey, and I hope soon Bruce Orr from the Department of Justice. But what I believe is this. When we begin to investigate the investigators, and I'm talking about outside groups and news outlets, and Congress begin to investigate the investigators, they fall. They fall one by one in this situation because they were trying to, one, influence an election. And when they weren't capable of doing that to defeat Donald Trump, they decided, okay, let's see what we can do to try and take him out after he's president.
Right.
So why did Bruce Orr keep working with Christopher Steele?
Okay, they're framing
They
it.
were putting it together. Yeah.
Okay, good. So now, Mark, here's the question. I mean, if Mueller is going to continue to do this investigation, no one is going to appoint a special counsel because Sessions ain't going to do it. Rod Rosenstein honestly should be fired based upon, and by the way, guys, I have a news flash for you. Rod Rosenstein's wife has her own issues in terms of conflicts. So, it's like this power couple thing going on in Washington. And yet the American people are frustrated. They're not getting any kind of answer. And they're almost giving up on us. What can we do, Mark?
I think the biggest thing is we can get behind Senator Graham's call, demand more information, and remember, there was a lot of congressional pressure that was being applied when Bob Mueller was being appointed, in addition to the work by Rod Rosenstein. If we can get enough members of Congress calling for this special counsel, you will put the pressure on to get it done.
Well, all right. So let's talk about Jordan then. The whole idea that the FBI notifies as a courtesy Senator Dianne Feinstein that they think that she's got a Chinese spy driving her around who's been on her staff for 20 years. But when it comes to Donald Trump and they think there's Russia collusion, they don't give him the courtesy of saying, we think that there may be some spies involved. No, what they do is they put their own spy in to see what Trump is doing. Or they call it a human source. How do they justify this?
They can't justify it, Judge. It goes right to the op-ed that Brennan wrote yesterday after he got his security clearance dropped. And what did he leave out in that op-ed? He said there's definitely collusion. It's just whether or not it's criminal. Why didn't he do anything about it? When did he learn about this collusion he's so certain about? Because if he learned about it when he was CIA director, why didn't he notify the secretaries of state who run our presidential elections across the country? Why didn't he notify Congress or the Trump campaign to be careful? And maybe even it was so broad that they need to notify the American people about these efforts because of the social media. He did nothing. So as Senator Burr had said, he either knew everything and sat on it, which was wrong as CIA director, or knew nothing, and then there was an intelligence breach after he left the CIA, which is how he found out this information, supposedly, which again would be a pretty good reason for pulling his security clearance, along with, by the way, calling the president guilty of treason, which is a crime punishable by death. I think at that point, you get your security clearance pulled, Mr. Brennan.
I talk about Brennan in my book, and I call him Pond Scum Brennan. Okay, so for the deep state, if you want to read about him, I got them all here. But, okay, final question to you, Mark. When it comes to this Mueller investigation, do you think that there's any way it's going to come to an end before the midterms? Do you think it's just going to go on and on? I mean, the Lindsey Graham letter ain't going anywhere unless Rod Rosenstein or Jeff Sessions has decides that they want to get back in line with law and order, and that's not happening.
I think the best way that Bob Mueller can try to salvage his reputation is to get this wrapped up so he cannot be accused of trying to influence the midterm election. So if there is any possible way, I would hope that he would take that. You've got a few weeks left. Get your report written. Get it to the people who need to see it. And then let's let the American people find out what actually happened. Because as the president said from day one, there's been no collusion and there's still been no evidence of it.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Or else Bob Mueller becomes Jim Comey.
Rush Limbaugh is sounding off on the left for freaking out over John Brennan losing his security clearance. We'll tell you what he said as this special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. On his radio show today, Rush Limbaugh weighed in on President Trump revoking Brennan's security clearance and the, quote, free speech hysteria that's ensued. Watch.
These people have acted in corrupt ways to sabotage the United States presidential election and then a subsequent United States presidency. Why do they qualify for a security clearance in the first place? This is the swamp that Trump promised everybody that he was going to drain. And he's doing a good job of it. What press freedom is being infringed? Donald Trump is not doing one thing to stop them. All he's doing is calling them out. All he's doing is pushing back, and this is what it looks like. All Donald Trump is doing is what we have wanted any Republican to do for the last 20 years. He's doing it. They say it's a denial of their freedom. They say the presidency is broken. They say we need to amend the Constitution and get rid of the presidency because Trump won. They are the ones that have the agenda that limits and denies freedom. They're the ones with the agenda that is punitive.